Hola, buen día para todos y todas. Bueno, voy a hacer mi comentario crítico sobre la presentación. Voy a tratar de tomar menos tiempo, así hay más tiempo para la discusión general. Tomando una frase de Evangelii Gaudium, creo que en general y en particular en la presentación, reincidimos en un señalamiento que nos hace Francisco, que es el exceso de diagnóstico. Hay un exceso de diagnóstico. Por ejemplo, 17.5 minutos fueron de diagnóstico, que es importante, pero más o menos es lo mismo que decimos todos todo el tiempo. La financiarización de la economía, los niveles de inequidad, las cuestiones morales que están detrás de todo esto. Y yo creo que sucede algo que señalabas y tiene que ver con la colonización de la lógica de la financiarización, la lógica gaseosa de la financiarización en el pensamiento social, donde nos cuesta plantear fuera de la abstracción absoluta caminos de resolución. Por ejemplo, por lo menos lo que yo encontré, y esto se hace una pregunta a ver si hay alguna cosa más que yo no haya entendido, como propuesta concreta, es el tema de los indicadores, que me parece interesante e importante. Hay que trabajar mejor el tema de los indicadores porque es evidente que los indicadores están fundamentalmente vinculados a cuestiones económico-financieras y no se receptan otro tipo de valores. Si bien hay experiencias como estos indicadores de la felicidad, etcétera, no hay un estándar que pueda servir suficientemente como un insumo para la acción, ¿no? Viendo la teoría como un insumo para la acción. Entonces yo quiero rescatar esta cuestión de los indicadores, que me parece que podemos profundizar y se puede trabajar, y que tiene que ver con el título de la charla, esta idea de la productividad contra la fecundidad, que yo lo replantearía como pensar la productividad desde una perspectiva alternativa, digamos, ¿no? Que hay cuestiones que tienen un valor económico, en términos de la economía como administración de la casa común, como las reglas de la casa común, pero no necesariamente financiero o comercial. Y que esos valores extrafinancieros, extracomerciales, se pueden contemplar, se pueden medir y pueden servir también como insumos para disputar políticas públicas y para disputar transformaciones sociales. Entonces eso yo lo tomo como un elemento concreto de propuesta, pero lo que a mí me sucede es que no suelo escuchar de los expertos en cuestiones de finanzas, etcétera, planteos de alternativas sistémicas. ¿Qué hay que hacer con los bancos? ¿Cerrarlos? ¿Nacionalizarlos? ¿Mundializarlos? ¿Hay que destruir el dinero, hacer una sola moneda única de todo el mundo, hacer una sola moneda electrónica? ¿Hay que socializar de manera absoluta los medios de financiamiento? ¿Hay que poner un impuesto a las transacciones financieras, un impuesto del 10%, del 20%, del 50%? No hay. Así como hay una radicalidad muy grande en los planteos neoliberales de destrucción de cualquier tipo de barrera de autonomía de los Estados-nación, en los planteos alternativos no hay ninguna radicalidad, no hay ningún planteo fuerte, que uno entienda, bueno, hay que hacer esto. Entonces, como decía Sartre, los ideales son como las estrellas, uno no llega, pero orientan su camino. Si uno no tiene grandes ideales y grandes planteos, nadie se entusiasma mucho con pequeños cambios regulatorios. Finalmente, para terminar con la parte mía y dejar al otro compañero, Frente a una crisis, eso en Latinoamérica lo hemos visto mucho, frente a una crisis siempre hay dos caminos, digamos, ¿no? Hay uno que termina mal, y es el aprovechamiento de la angustia y del temor que genera la incertidumbre para generar sistemas reforzados de lo anterior, ¿no? Un poco lo que fue el fascismo y el nazismo, ¿no? Un capitalismo reforzado. Nosotros estamos viendo que esta crisis, los miedos y las angustias que genera esta crisis, políticamente están siendo direccionados para que grandes sectores de la población responsabilicen a los que tienen más abajo y no a los que tienen más arriba, ¿no? Lo podríamos llamar el populismo de derecha. La culpa la tienen los migrantes, los pobres, los desplazados, etcétera, y no el capital concentrado, el sector financiero, etcétera. Por eso tenemos un exceso de diagnóstico, pero es un diagnóstico que no hace suficientemente claro cómo afecta en la vida cotidiana de los sectores populares, de manera concreta y específica, la divinización del dinero, ¿no? Porque cuando no hay un planteo alternativo, en general los planteos que triunfan son de estas características. El más fácil, el del chivo expiatorio. Bueno, nada más, muchas gracias.
Thanks very much, Juan. We have now Elio Gas. No?
No había otro. Yo lo hice cortito para que se pueda discutir. There was not other one, so I did it very short, so yes, everybody can.
I have Elio Gazda as the second respondent, no? Oh, I'm sorry. So what should we do? Discussion, open discussion then. Okay. Okay, thanks a lot. I have the old one, yeah. So you can, yeah. Yes, let's start with.
Yes, I think that staying in the logic of the virtuous relationship between civil society, state, and the market applied to finance. I like very much the frame presented by Paul, and I think we have an experience of, in terms of solution, I agree with Juan that we must try to outline some of our priorities in terms of policies, prescription, and solution. We have a 10-year experience as a network for the reform of financial system in Europe. I'm the spokesman of the Italian side. And in this experience, we outline 4 priorities to us. First priority is to defend financial biodiversity. There is a threat to that. The idea of the system is that we must have only large banks, big banks, profit-maximizing banks listed at the stock exchange. And the paradox is that these banks will never find it convenient to lend to small business, to lend to artisans, because basically this is against the profit maximization, too many costs and too few benefits. Okay, this is a simple textbook analysis. So basically the first issue for us, we have to defend biodiversity, cooperative banking, ethical banking, because this is microfinance, because half of microfinance is also profit maximizing. So we have to defend that. That's, to me, is the first priority. Second priority, we already said yesterday, the fight to tax dodging, tax evasion, and we already said this. Third priority, I think the real mechanism through which profit maximization goes into the system is the way managers are paid. Incentive, merit, what Luigino said yesterday. And as we said, if managers, it's not just the amount of money they get, the bonus, but that the bonus is linked to profits or to, and that means that when the cake does not grow, the manager has the incentive to increase his slice at the expense of the slice of the other stakeholder in order to cash the bonus. That's exactly what happened in telecom just now with Cattaneo getting out with billion of just cutting the cost of workers and these things. So I think we must have an alternative idea of how managers should be paid. And that's what we do with active shareholdership in Europe. The last point is a very controversial point, but is very important, is financial transaction tax. In Europe, we have a movement for like 5-6 countries with cooperation. They're trying to put that. And we have a long debate. We have shown that this is not going to affect in any way the functioning of the market. This is going to collect a lot of money, 50 billion in Europe only. And we have discussed in length how this could work. I always make this example when people say, okay, you are going to create a problem of liquidity in the market. When markets are too liquid, they create financial crisis. The housing market in the US was so liquid that people were buying and selling houses just on the paper, just if they were stocks. And that was the reason why there was the bubble, and that was the origin of the financial crisis, that bubble. So we don't need markets so liquid. It's better to put some sands into the market, because excess of liquidity is a disaster. So I think that's our 10-year story of financial campaign led us to focus on these 4 points. And I wanted to ask to Paul if he agrees these are the main points.
Thank you, Professor Becchetti. We have four people in line. First of all, Monsignor Marcelo Sánchez Orondo.
Yo quisiera decir al profesor que primero no estoy de acuerdo con la reconstrucción histórica, porque él comienza a decir que había un momento de la Belle Époque donde todo andaba bien. No andaba bien en la Belle Époque, para nada, porque la gente era un poco menor, la cantidad de gente, pero igual había esclavos y había todo tipo de formas de trabajo deshumano. Y empezaba también un poco el problema del clima, que ahora explotó. Y luego me parece muy importante lo que dice Grabois, es decir, nosotros tenemos, por cifras de los economistas que nos han dado acá, tenemos una entrada por año de 100 trillones, 1.000 millones de dólares. 30 trillones de dólares están en las tax havens, los paraísos fiscales. El 10% de esto además viene del mercado negro, que significa tráfico humano en las versiones peores, que significa trabajo forzado, que significa prostitución, que crece, porque es un nuevo negocio, pero que crece cada vez más, que significa tráfico de órganos, que significa droga, que significa mafia. Es decir, lo que llamaba Juan Pablo II las estructuras de pecado, aquellas estructuras que tienen fines, medios y todo malo, que están hechas para el mal, a diferencia de las estructuras buenas como los bancos, digamos, cuando funcionan bien, dominan las otras estructuras. De manera que un poco me parece como el que se cae en un río y saca el pañuelo para secarse la frente. Las soluciones que se proponen son un poco débiles. Gracias.
Thanks very much, Monsignor. Now, next in line, Professor Andrea Avish.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. From my perspective, what is obvious here in finance, probably very prominent way, but also in digitalization, is that we are not having a lack of morality, actually. Yeah, there are moral codes, for example, the UN came up with the principles of responsible investment and so on. So there is some morality. But the question is, where are the actors? Yeah, where are the institutions which put these moral codes into action, or guards? Yeah, and if we look into the years of the financial crisis, this was obvious. Yeah, so they had a lot of observers. It was not that it was totally, the crisis was totally unexpected. Some people already anticipated it. But where to look, whom to address? Not even a single government, not even the American government, the US government could, in a way, get these forces into control again. And I think this is a major topic which we also see in other questions, but it becomes very obvious in financialization and digitalization. And therefore, my question to Paul, in Catholic social thought, we have a long tradition of these self-administrative bodies and the idea of subsidiarity. I talk about that in a moment also. There has been a PhD written by a colleague who tries to elaborate something like this for the financial markets as well. Yeah, I mean, we have at least this international association of the bankers, yeah, who know each other, who know also the ways to escape, who know also the ways to find your own, or even to trick other people. Is this maybe a road to go to come to such self-administrative bodies in finance, and is there any model for such an idea?
Thank you, Professor Abish. First, excuse me, yes, first Adam Seligman and then Stefano. Yeah.
An entanglement, then I won't speak. I'm sorry. I can't turn it on. It's Saturday. I'm sorry. Then I won't speak. I'm sorry. Okay, no speak. Sorry. I'll ask you privately. It's fine. Okay. So human well-being cannot exist. So the gentleman put it on, and it's on now, and I'll speak into it.
I know, in this case, speak in private way, in a private moment.
Let me try again, Paul.
Place, and the least thing is to respect religious convictions of the others. Sorry.
Okay, somebody solve the problem and we can continue. There's not, I say it's on now, and so I can speak. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Let me start again. Okay. Okay, Paul, let's try again. Human well-being is unimaginable outside of some entanglement with past, present, and future. Yeah? You said something fascinating, almost en passant, that financialization does to time what globalization does to space. I'm wondering if you could elaborate that a little bit in terms of relations between past, present, and future. That's all. Sorry for the inconvenience. Apologies.
Thanks very much, Professor Seligman. Stefano, I think you are next.
Thank you, Paul, for your presentation, very lively and effective. I have three different remarks. Leonardo mentioned the so-called Tobin tax. It is probably proper to know that the Tobin tax was proposed more or less at the same time also by Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman belonging to the right wing, Tobin to the American left wing. And both of them were anticipated, as you know, by John Hicks from Oxford, who was the first to use the metaphor of the sand. He said, we should put some grains of sand in the machinery of the financial mechanism, because finance should stop from time to time. And in fact, Tobin and Friedman too. So today, it's technically possible to enforce a law, but you know the difficulties, which are political due to also lack of knowledge, because most people believe that introducing such a tax would determine a sort of a crisis of sub-liquidity, which is not true. It's not, it has been proved. And that again means that theoretical and scientific knowledge is very important, because if you want to combat certain position, you have to use rigorous arguments. Otherwise, people will never get convinced. Second, what do you think about the perspectives of social finance? We know that today social finance represents almost at the world level 20% of all financial transactions, 20 more or less. And it's not, of course, it's a minority, but it's also true that it's a affair of the last 20 years. Don't you think that we should intervene, for instance, at the level of our community, including the churches or the various religious orders, if they would transfer their financial assets into the social finance channel, perhaps that would represent a major sign in that direction. Finally, a financialization of the economy is not something which is inevitable, because in the past never existed. I always remind the following figure. In 1980, the total amount of financial assets at the world level was more or less the same as the global GDP. So there was a sort of a balance. Now, the last data I have seen, referring to the year 2015, these are official data, show that the total amount of financial assets is 7 times higher than the total GDP. Now, this is a fact, because capitalism existed even before. But why before 1980s, the 80s of last century, such a phenomenon did not exist? Which means that financialization is not inevitable, as some economists keep on saying that is the result a sort of an endogenous problem. No, it's not endogenous, it's exogenous, because derivatives never existed before the 80s, the famous GDP. And so that is the result, again, if we should know that. The derivatives is the result of the work of 3 American economists. 2 of them obtained the Nobel Prize for having produced a famous article where they proved that they invented the derivative system. And now we know that that article contains 2 major mistakes, scientific mistakes, not so much mathematical, but logical mistakes. But in spite of that, the third one passed away, so that is why he didn't get the Nobel Prize, but they never admitted that. That it's a lack of, let's say, the mechanism of information. I mean, a scientific community should take action, at least admitting, saying, we have done a mistake, and our mistake has determined this disaster, because without the derivatives, we would not have the crisis. That is certain. So I say these things to mean that we should not, we should strive more to modify and attack the deep causes of what are today observing. That is perhaps part of what you are doing in your observatoire, but we should insist more on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I suppose that Professor Dembinski has some minutes to answer. Or to...
The budget, the time budget. Okay, I will free ride. Okay. Thank you, Juan, muchas gracias por sus comentarios. Prefiero seguir en inglés, pero podemos discutir después en el café cara a cara. Of course, diagnosis is, let's say, job of university professors, and policy actions is the job of social, political, and economic actors. But I fully take the point. And it describes, I think, the sense of urgency, but also a certain lack of big response. And if we look at, I'm not a historian, but many things have changed because people changed. Asking for the structures to be changed is part of the story. It's about structures. But it has, the other part is to do with spirit. We can help the structures. And the question of indicators, thank you for insisting about this. I think it is absolutely critical. We have been through different attempts by Nobel Prize winners, Sen, Stiglitz, and so on, to reform GDP, but it was putting other issues into the GDP, which I think is a methodological dead end. We have to build alternative, not destroying GDP, but complementing GDP and creating this ambivalence that would open, with also open flow to political debate and expressing values that underline policy choices. So it should not be 50 indicators, a little bit like with the millennial goals and so on and so on. There are too many of them. We should be able, if we did it with GDP, it's possible to do it in other areas, to produce a single indicator. And maybe this honorable institution could set up an expert meeting or maybe work process in order to propose. Because the prophetic world, in the moment of systemic transformation and uncertainty, as we know with popes in general, Pope Francis in particular, prophetic words may change the world and make shake the world. It's not the utopias about which Professor Archer said extrapolations of the present situation, but something totally new and showing place which we could reach. So I take fully your comment. Then some of the comments intersect with others. I will take 2 or 3 of them, starting with a story about Tobin tax and so on. I mentioned in one of the slides viscosity. Viscosity has to be introduced in the financial system. It has to do with time because it has to do with speed. Today, more than half of stock market operations are what is called high-frequency trading. High-frequency trading is in milliseconds or even below. So, of course, if you introduce even a minimal tax, it will just die, which is 50% of trade. So there is a huge lobby defending and fighting this kind of measures. Simply because, of course, in theory, the world can live without, but these people cannot. And this is very important. So viscosity is one of the ways of slowing down finance, which goes at the speed of the light. When the real economic and social processes go at the speed, we know that this has to do with human speed. So, and there is not only one way of bringing viscosity in the financial system. Taxing financial gains according to the duration of holding. It's another way, which we do not then need a macro global agreement for this. We can do it on the country basis, or even depending on local legislation at the local basis. But of course, the danger is that so part of the business will move away, as we have seen yesterday. I saw in the television, Spanish television, that 900 firms moved out of Catalonia during the last 2 weeks. Yes, there might be a business exodus. Yes, that's the price of globalization. But if the policymakers are there to take courageous decisions, this might be some of them. So viscosity. The other point, and I fully agree what you said about the pricing, but nevertheless, the derivative pricing formula was invented. It was not a scientific breakthrough, it was a technical breakthrough that allowed the markets to flourish and all of derivatives. And here a very important point. What happened during the 30 euphoric years? The nature of the financial system has changed. Before, in the glorious years and even before, the function was to allocate or to channel savings into more or less real economy investments. Since then, it became a risk allocation system. So we allocate risk and not so much allocate capital. And all these liquidity stories is there because there is a volatility, and volatility is the source of profit, of remunerations, and it feeds about, according to my estimates, more than 50% of the financial GDP, if you want. So it is something that has outgrown any reasonable limits. We have to go back somewhere to money and capital serving the people, not serving the risk management. And risk management is very profitable, once again. So this is a very important point, and Juan was speaking about money serving the people. And here there is a mythology of compound interest rates. This mythology is a building block of pension schemes based on capital. So we are all part of this trip. So it's not only the bad financial people and we the good ones. All of us, in some way or another, is part of the financialization process. So we have to start at both levels, at the macro, but also at the micro level. And if money is there to circulate, we have to get rid somewhere of the idea that money will work for you and you don't have anything to do anymore. Okay? So this is, from Christian perspective, I think also very, very important. The other point I wanted to touch upon is the complexity of institutions, that it has to do with remunerations. Sorry, I will start with remuneration, then go to the complexity of institutions. But remuneration, I agree with what you said, Leonardo, about the skyrocketing remuneration. But where does it start? It starts at business school. It happened to me to teach in 102, and you also too, in business schools. People are there because many of them have these expectations. In one day, I will reach this level. So if we do not start by destroying it somewhere as a methodology, as something that is morally weak at the moment, at the level of training, then it's not enough just to curtail and to limit the top. It's important, but it's not enough. It's part of, let's say, more social psychology today, at least in the West. And here, once again, the role of academia, and it has been discussed, what we can do. It's beyond diagnosis. We have to move. We have to move to reform the way we teach these disciplines. And very little has been done. So there are elements of, but very little has been done 10 years down the road, when it becomes obvious that there is not only methodological errors, but anthropological lies. Complexity of institutions. I think this is a very important point, because André was mentioning, yes, there is a lot of morality. Yes, there is a lot of morality. On the bookshelves. On the bookshelves. I'm for 20 years involved in ethics in finance. The codes, you could fill this library with codes. The problem is, what is the use made of these codes? In academia, first in academia, if you go to different universities, of course not yours, and ask finance professors, marketing professors, human resources professors, what are the ethical issues that they address? Many of them, of those that I met, say, well, we have a specialized course for it. It's not part of marketing, it's not part of finance, it's not part of human resources, of organization, etc. There is a special ethical there's a special ethical shelf for it. Yes, but who mixes the two? And at some stage, therefore the last diagram is so important. At some stage, the decision maker has to have this open shelf, if you want, to ethical thinking. I give you one example. We are running a competition for young people under 35 for essays in ethics in finance. Just finished the 6th competition. I had contacts with financial institutions, major world financial institutions, saying, please provide the information about this to your young promising managers. Few answers I got. We'll not do it. Why? And one was frank on the phone. I will not, of course, name the bank. Said, we don't want them to think too much about these issues. Okay? It's human resources of a major bank employing tens of thousands of people across the world. So, yes, there is a lot of ethics, but the mixing between the ethics and the reality is still to be achieved. And autonomous bodies, I agree with this. This is very important, but it has to do with rediscovering what ethics means, not only at the checklist, not only as a compliance department, but something in which the quality of what I do is appreciated. And this links to the question of complexity of institutions. I don't remember which Catholic council was addressed with the question if arquebus can be used in warfare. And the answer was given they should not be used because we don't know, we don't see the effect of the arrow because the distance covered by the arrow is too long. So it gives the idea that we can be ethical when we understand what we do. So there is a consequence of what I do. Complexity of institutions and the way many institutions are organized.
Sorry, Professor. Be more synthetic because we have 50 minutes.
So I was asking for the budget. I asked for the budget. So I finished in 2 minutes. Let me finish in 2 minutes. So the complexity of institutions prevents people, many, especially middle management people, to see the consequences of their deeds. So if you don't see consequence, it's very difficult to be ethical. So the complexity of institutions is something that has to be addressed because of tax evasions. It allows tax evasion. It is something which is risky because it's difficult to be managed. And of course, it is impossible to be regulated. So we are going to come back to it in the last session about digital industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Question I did not ask about future and past and present. Financial. Allow me, because there was a problem with the question, should not be a problem with the answer. The point of finance is trade in promises. So finance is always future-oriented. I buy and sell my future, I buy your future. And all the indebtedness mechanism is to bring the future into the present. When I'm buying a share, somebody was mentioning the price of Tesla. It's not because Tesla is generating profits. It's because there is in future expectations of what Tesla will generate in 20 years from now, and I paid now. So the interface between the future and the past disappears. And even there is a reversal. I use the future in order to make my living of today, when the traditional view, I'm building the future. Sorry.